So I know I say this every class, but it's for a good reason. This is a very important class. This is a very, very important class. And I think really more than anything, this concept that we're going to speak about tonight is the difference between living a really happy life and or the opposite. This one main thing that we're going to speak about right now. I'm going to use a piece from Sichot Aran. This is a book that Rav Nachman of Breslov, his main student, Rav Natan, he wrote a book where he took out all of Rabbi Nachman's main lessons, which are very complex, and he simplified them, and he gave it over almost as a conversation piece. Sicha means like to speak, to converse, like you're talking with your best friend. So he speaks to us almost like he's speaking to his best friend, but based on Rabbi Nachman's deepest wisdom. Last week, we spoke about why it's so important to have a Rebbe. Not just any Rebbe, but a tzaddik. And not just any tzaddik, but a true tzaddik, a tzaddik emet. So if you didn't get to see that class, I highly recommend you go back and listen to it. Because the truth is, the whole reason we spoke about that was to get to this. Because only through the tzaddik can you get to the level that we're going to speak about right now. And this is really the essence of the Baal Shem Tov's Torah, and this is really the essence of Rabbi Nachman's Torah. I'm going to read you a pasuk from Tehillim. So Tehillim is the book that David HaMelech wrote. And one of the reasons so important for us in our generation, and it's important to women in general, is because the Arizal teaches, he was the greatest mystic who ever lived, and he teaches that David HaMelech, King David, he had a completely female soul. Even though he was physically a man, he actually had the soul of a female. Why is that important? Because Chassidut explains this and talks about this a lot, and one of the proofs that most Hasidic masters have at this point, that this really is the last generation, is the fact that Chassidut and Kabbalah have explained for hundreds of years that in the days of Mashiach, it is the female part of the soul of the universe which needs to reveal itself, both within people and within the creation. And in order to achieve the redemption, it's going to be dependent on connecting and manifesting and actualizing the female aspect of all of our souls, both men and for women. And therefore, Tehillim might be the most important book of our generation, because David HaMelech, who is the soul of Mashiach, is a completely female soul, and there's a reason for that. Because to have redemption is dependent on being a female. The rabbis teach this clearly, that in the end, the redemption is only going to come in merit of the Jewish women. Now, simply that means that the women are always doing something at the end which lifts their husbands or their families up or their brothers up. There's something inherent about the female which is redemptive. However, Chassidut explains on a deeper level, there is a female aspect of each of us. And when we tap into that female aspect, that is what brings the redemption to the world. That's why it means in the merit of the women, meaning the female aspect of the soul. And because David HaMelech had a female soul, so he wrote a female book. And the redemption is dependent on that book. That book is called Tehillim. In English, they call this Psalms. So I remember, it took me a couple years before I actually read Tehillim. I always thought to myself, this is going to be like an archaic book. It's written thousands of years ago. How am I going to connect to this person's prayers who lived in a totally different world than I do? You know, I'm Baal Tshuva. I grew up secular my whole life. I can't even imagine what he's speaking about and how much I'm not going to connect. I just remember going to, it was a school called Road of Torah. It was a reform school growing up as a kid. And I hated going to shul, and I hated praying from their books. So in my mind, I had like this trauma, like I could only imagine what Tehillim would be like, what Psalms is like. But I remember I was going through a very, very difficult time. Very difficult. And it was really, to be honest, just barely hanging on. But I read something that Rabbi Nachman said, And he said that when Hanukkah comes, you have an ability to sit in front of that first light. And if you say Tehillim, and you're able to cry, not because you're forcing it, not because you're trying to, but because you're connecting to such a real place, such a place of brokenness, that if you're able to connect and to cry from that place and from the first light of the Hanukkah, of your candle, you can pray for anything and it gets answered. And even though as a secular person growing up and as an atheist growing up, it's hard for me to believe when rabbis say things like this. But because I was so desperate and I really needed help, so I figured, why not? I'll try. And I remember I sat in front of the Chanukiah and I took out Tehillim for the first time, even though I had been learning Torah now for a couple years, a few years maybe. And I started reading it and I started crying immediately. And I couldn't believe how much I connected to David. How much, despite the fact that he lived thousands of years ago, everything that he spoke about, I was experiencing. And I thought I was the only one experiencing these things. And even though I thought maybe in my mind other people did experience these things privately, you can never know for sure. But when I read this book, I saw for the first time in my life as a fact that somebody went through all of these things. And I started to cry. I ended up having a dream that night, which ended up keeping me going and getting me through that time. I said to Hashem, I don't even need you to help me at this point because you're not helping me. But just show me that you're with me. If you show me that you're with me, I can keep going. But if you don't even show me that you're with me, I can't keep doing this. I changed my life. I disconnected from my friends and family. I went completely against society and the things that I grew up with, and it's really hard. And I said, if you don't show me you're with me, I can't continue. I need to know at least that you're with me. I ended up having a very, very, very deep dream that night, which I remember still to this day. I'm not going to tell you what was in the dream, but anyway, it was an answer to the prayers. Okay? I'm just trying to show you that Tehillim is very important, not just in general, but it's very important for our generation, because Chassidut explains that all of the souls in the last generation are really sparks of the Mashiach. And the Mashiach is King David. So that means that we have a special connection to Tehillim that no other generation has ever had. Because, so to speak, the experiences that he had in his lifetime, even though everybody can connect to some level, and people have for thousands of years, that we can connect the deepest. Because we are actually sparks of his soul. And if you ever allow yourself to read Tehillim, 1 second, I'm just going to mute everybody because you can hear what's going on with them. If you can ever get a good copy of Tehillim with a modern English translation, there's one that's called, 1 second. There's one that's called Psalms That Speak to You. It was actually written by a Breslover. So the English that he uses there is more modern and it's more meaningful, and he proves that it's actually what David HaMelech meant when he said all the things that he said. It's going to connect with you a lot more. Anyway, this Sikha that Rav Nachman is teaching, that Rav Natan is bringing down, has to do with this one pasuk. And again, this is the fundamental pasuk in Tehillim for a Jew. It's very, very, very important. And everything that Rabbi Nachman is trying to teach us to do, and that you see Breslovers, that they have some type of happiness or joy or peace, connection, whatever it is that you're looking for, how have they been able to attain it? What is it that they're learning that we can try and connect to? And it's this pasuk. So the pasuk says like this. Hashlech al Hashem Yahavcha. David HaMelech says, cast all of your problems on Hashem. V'hu yechalkelecha. He is going to bear your burden. Lo yiten lamot letzadik. He's not going to allow a good person to always stumble. It's going to end. So what is David HaMelech teaching? What is the soul of Mashiach telling us? We grow up thinking that we have to take care of our problems. That's called being responsible. You have a problem, you take care of it. The Torah teaches it's not what you think it is. To take care of your problem means to throw it on HaShem. Your children don't listen to you, throw it on HaShem. Your husband is not paying attention to you, or he's not treating you well, throw it on HaShem. You're having trouble paying your bills, you don't know how you're going to get to the next month. To be responsible as a Jew is to throw it on HaShem. Cast it on HaShem. What does it mean he's going to bear your burden? It doesn't just mean he's going to be there with you, which he will. It means he's going to take care of it. To the degree that you let him bear that burden, to that degree, he's going to take care of it. How does David HaMelech know that? How is he so sure of that? So it's taught by the Rizal and by the Ramchal, the deepest mystics who ever lived. Why did Hashem create the world? He created the world only in order to give all of the good to something else, to someone else. Now, he is all of the good, but there's nothing besides him. So who is he going to give to? So he created Jews, he created us, and then he created the whole world so that we can experience all of that good and then to teach others how to do the same thing. What is that good? So we think that good is a new purse. We think that good is our husband doing everything we want him to. We think that good is my children going to the school that I want them to and getting the grades that I want them to. The ultimate good is that you tell Hashem, I'm struggling with this and I need you to take care of it, and he does. That is the ultimate good. If you can imagine any of your problems in your life and imagine that even though you've been struggling to try and fix it or to deal with it, and you can actually honestly say to Hashem, Hashem, you gave me this problem. I need you to take care of it. And you let it go. Imagine if that problem then became solved. What type of feeling would you have? Not just that your relief would come, not just that the problem is gone, but that you realize how much Hashem has always been there for you and how he's just waiting to help you. We had Pesach already, but I'm just going to mention something because it's very important. The Jews were enslaved in Mitzrayim. What is Mitzrayim? We've talked about this a lot. Mitzrayim is not just a physical place. Mitzrayim is a state of mind. When you think that you have to take care of your problems, that Hashem's not going to do it, that he doesn't want to do it, that he can't do it, whatever is going on in your mind, that you're not completely throwing it on Hashem, that's called being in Mitzrayim. When Moshe Rabbeinu was in Mitzrayim and he was trying to get the Jews out of Egypt, Paro asked Moshe to pray for him. Moshe said, okay, but I can't do it here. I have to leave Mitzrayim. Rabbi Nachman says, why does he have to leave Mitzrayim to pray? You can't pray in Mitzrayim? The answer is no, you can't. Because Mitzrayim is the state of mind that you think that you're guided by nature and coincidences and happenstance. That's called living in Egypt. We have a mitzvah every day to remember that we left there. Meaning that even though we feel like that, we're not slaves anymore. Why would we have to mention that every day for an event that happened thousands of years ago? And the answer is it's happening every day. Rabbi Nachman says that every single day you have to know that you're leaving Mitzrayim that day. You have a new Mitzrayim. You have a new situation or conflict or burden in your life that makes you feel that only through natural means you're going to be able to take care of it. To leave Mitzrayim today means cast it all on Hashem. Now, when you hear people say that, or you hear rabbis say that, usually what they mean is, Hashem, I need your help. Please help me. And then you do all the physical work that you need to try and take care of it. You go to this advisor, and you go to this teacher, and you go to this clinic, and you get this medicine, and you go to this doctor, and you see this therapist. What does it mean to cast it on him? They'll say that you ask him for help. So Rabbi Nachman says it's much more than that. And this is what he says right here. So listen to this piece. He says it is very good to rely on Hashem completely. Completely. What does completely sound like? Completely. That you are relying on Hashem to solve your problems, all of your problems. And not 50% of your problem, not 99% of your problem, but 100% of your problem. He says, as each day begins, I place my every moment and that of my children and everyone who depends on me in Hashem's hands, asking that everything goes however Hashem wants it to. You should know this is how Breslovers wake up. They get up in the morning. They don't just say Modeni. They say, Hashem, I'm giving my day to you. You created the world. You created me. You created my circumstances. My husband needs my help. My family needs my help. My children need my help. I feel alone. I feel like I'm struggling. But you know what? You gave me these circumstances. Now, I need you to take care of them. I'm giving my day to you. And that's how they start their day. And by the way, that's how they go to sleep as well. If you look in Rav Arush's, he has his own Siddur. He made a Siddur recently. He has a prayer that he says before he goes to sleep. And he pretty much just says, I'm going to sleep now. Regardless of how many hours I get, I'm asking you, I'm begging you, I'm relying on you to help me feel rested tomorrow. And if I don't, and I struggle, that's your problem. Now, obviously, most people don't feel comfortable talking to Hashem like this. But Rabbi Nachman makes it very explicit that Hashem loves this. Because it was the whole reason that Hashem created you was to have this type of relationship with you. That you rely on Him completely and that He pulls through for you. And to the degree that you rely on Him, to that degree He pulls through for you. Where is the proof for this? When Moshe took the Jews out of Egypt, which we now know means a state of mind that you think that you are the victim of your circumstances. And not that Hashem's active, purposeful, Ratzon, His will, is what's creating every moment of your life. So when Moshe says, what am I going to tell him your name is? Hashem says, tell him my name is Eker Asher Eker. I will be what I will be. There's many different explanations for what this is, but I'm going to tell you one very deep one, which has to do with what we're speaking about. I will be what I will be means I will be whatever you allow me to be. Meaning, if you believe I can solve 50% of your problem and you have to go physically solve the other 50%, I can do that for you. If you believe that I can solve 75% of your problem and you only have to solve 25%, I'll do that for you. If you believe 100% that I can take care of your problem and you don't have to do anything, I can do that for you also. I will be what I'll be. I'll be what you allow me to be. This is what the Jews in Egypt needed to hear. Because the whole reason they were enslaved was because they all believed in nature. They didn't believe in Hashem. They didn't talk to Hashem. Rav Nachman says the whole entire exile was that none of them could speak to Hashem. Now, why wouldn't a person speak to Hashem? Because he doesn't really believe He's going to help him. Or he doesn't believe He wants to help him. So who needs to save us? It's Moshe. And what is he telling us that saves us? Eker Asher Eker. I will be what I will be. You're enslaved right now in Egypt. You've been enslaved for 200 years now with atrocities, with terrible suffering, with oppression, family issues, Shalom Bayit issues, health issues. But I'm telling you right now that on paper it looks like you're stuck. But I will be whatever you allow me to be. To this point, you haven't allowed me to be anything because you don't believe I can help you. Moshe, go tell them, I can take them out right now. They just have to believe it first. The world teaches us that when you see it, you'll believe it. Rabbi Nachman says the opposite. When you believe it, you'll see it. Now, many people would say, well, that's just psychological, right? If you believe in something, so then you're going to start to see it. Rav Nachman says so much deeper than that. That Hashem will be whatever you allow Him to be. If you believe 100% that Hashem can take care of every single one of your problems, He will be that for you. So he's saying right here, it's good to rely on Hashem completely. To allow Hashem to be that 100% bearer and redeemer of all of your issues. Not just for you, for your husband, for your children, for your parents, for the world. He says, this is very good. And I have no worries. Why is it that the students of Rabbi Nachman are so happy? Why is it that if you see videos of Rav Shalom Arush, it looks like he never had a problem in his life? But if you look up his personal history and you see the tragedies he's experienced in his life, you're going to ask yourself, how can he be so happy? And the answer is that every morning when he wakes up, he says, Hashem, I'm giving my day to you. That means that if something happens in my life, that's your problem. That's not my problem. You created that problem, and I need you to take care of it. Now, let's say you don't take care of it. Let's say I need to pay my rent, and I can't pay my rent because I don't have money for it. And my husband's not working because he's depressed. And my kids are not listening because I'm the only one taking care of them. So Rabbi Nachman is saying for that woman to say to Hashem, that's your problem. I need you to help me now. And if you don't, I'm not going to pay my rent. But that's not my fault. That's on you. And Rabbi Nachman teaches that prayer gets answered every time. And I know that's hard to believe. And I know that's crazy. But it's true. And the whole exile is that we don't believe that. Rav Nachman says, how do you have no worries? This pasuk, cast your problems on Hashem completely, and He will bear your burden. Whether or not things go well, I'm completely reliant on Hashem. Whatever He desires, I already asked that I only want to do what He wants. So in the morning, if you say, Hashem, I just want to do what you want me to do. I want my day to go like you want it to go. Then however your day goes, that's obviously how Hashem wanted it to go. That means you don't have to worry about the results. That is your hishtadlut. That is your effort. That's all you have to do. Before each Shabbat, every Chag, we just had Pesach. I'm sure everybody was going crazy, trying to get rid of all the crumbs. What did Rabbi Nachman say on Pesach? He used to say, I got my shmura matzah. I tried to clean out as best as I could. I tried to do whatever I know I can do. Now, this Pesach, I'm going to be 100% happy, because if there's still chametz in my house, that's on you, that's not on me. Happiness comes when you rely on Hashem completely. And Hashem loves when you do that. And this is the key to happiness. This is the key to joy, no matter what's going on in your life. You know, they asked Rav Chaim Kramer, if you guys have watched the videos of these classes, they're on Breslov Research Institute, so that's his company. He's the one who created that. He's the one who translated all of Rabbi Nachman's teachings to English for the past 30 years. And I saw an interview with him recently. It was like in the past year or two. And he was teaching about Rabbi Nachman's teachings to people who never heard them. And someone said, is that normal to always be happy though? Or is that even compassionate or empathetic? What about when you go difficulties? What about when you have normal human experiences, when you're having tremendous hardship, somebody's sick, somebody's not well, you're stressed, you're hurt? Why should you be happy then? Shouldn't you also embrace sadness sometimes in your life? How is that normal? So Rav Kramer said, you think I don't have any problems? I just buried my daughter this year. I literally just buried my daughter, my own daughter. I stayed up all night with my wife at night. Because we can't go to sleep. But that's Hashem's problem. And you need to ask Hashem to fix that problem. This is one of the biggest, most important concepts which Rabbi Nachman is hammering home for us. We don't create our problems. Hashem does. Why does He create them? Just so you can ask Him to take it away. And you might say, that doesn't sound so nice. That doesn't sound like such a great God. However, we don't realize that the greatest thing in the world is to feel close to Hashem. Hashem wants to give us all of the good. What does that look like? So David HaMelech says in Tehillim, Mashiach says, Kirvat Elokim, closeness to Hashem, tovli. This is good for me. Meaning this is the ultimate good. To feel close to Hashem is the ultimate good. To feel that Hashem is taking care of all of your problems, that's the best good. You know, you look at a person, everything is going groovy in his life, and he's happy. Okay, nice, wonderful. Now you see another person who can't pay his bills. He has issues with his children and with his husband. He has issues at work, issues in all areas of his life, and he's just as happy as that person who doesn't have any of those issues. Who's more impressive? Who's living in a higher state of existence? Hashem brought us down to this world that looks like He's not here at all, just so that we can believe in Him to show us that He is. And when you allow yourself to, which is very scary, which takes a tremendous amount of courage and a tremendous amount of effort, but when you do it and you see that He's there and He's been waiting to hear from you His whole life, and He created the whole world just for you to have that relationship with you and that experience, then you're going to be able to look back and see, wow, how good is Hashem? There's another pasuk in Tehillim that we say in Ashrei. So it's very interesting because the Gemara says that any Jew who says Ashrei 3 times a day is guaranteed the next world, Olam Haba. There's a pasuk in Tehillim in that parak, in that chapter, and it says there, Hashem is good to all. So the way that we usually read it is that Hashem is good to everybody. Rav Nachman says that's not what it means. It means He's good for everything. What does it mean He's good for all? It means for whatever you need, He's good for it. You want to buy a dress for your wedding coming up, and your husband is in school, and you are out of work because you're pregnant, and you really want to get a nice dress. Hashem's good for that. Ask Hashem, I know maybe this is not the most important thing in the world, but I really want to get a nice dress for this wedding. I want to go out for the first time in weeks. This is a family member. I want people around to see that to be Jewish is to be happy. I want to buy a beautiful dress. Help me to buy one. Rabbi Nachman says He's good for that. There's a famous story about Rabbi Nachman that one of his students lost his button on his shirt. And he saw that he lost his button. He goes, oh, I got to get a new shirt. I got to get a new button. He goes, I got to go to the store. He said, why don't you ask Hashem? He said, why would I ask Hashem for a button? I'm just going to go to the tailor and buy the button. He goes, and who says that tailor is going to be open now? And who says he's going to have the button you need? Ask Hashem for the button. By the way, just a funny side point. I told this story for the first time in my class a few years ago to the guys. There was a younger guy there who was hearing this and never heard Rabbi Nachman's teachings before. And the concept of just relying completely on Hashem was blowing his mind because it seemed too good to be true. And when I told him about the story, I then moved on to another topic until the end of the class. And he couldn't concentrate the whole time. He left the class. He came back. I saw he was thinking the whole time. At the very end of the class, he screamed out, what happened to the button? It was just a very funny moment. Anyway, we were all cracking up. Hopefully he got that button. I'm not sure. But I guess because Hashem's good for everything, he got the button, okay? So the point is, what does it mean He's good to all? And what's the reason you get Olam Haba by saying this 3 times a day? Because the whole key to experiencing the next world, even in this world, is to realize that Hashem is good for everything. Everything. Don't just ask Hashem, okay, I want to go to the land of Israel. I want Mashiach. I want Beit HaMikdash. That's great. You should. Rabbi Nachman says you should pray for everything. Hashem's good for everything. You want that dinner you've been craving for like a week now? Ask Hashem. You should be able to do it. You want to hang out with your husband? He hasn't been paying attention to you for a few days because he's at work? Say, Hashem, Hashem, I know my husband needs to support us. I know if he doesn't get money, we're not going to be able to stay in this apartment. But I really want something to happen that my husband can stay with me for a night and just have dinner with me and not have to do that and me not have to ask him to. Hashem can do that for you also. The whole exiles, we don't realize how easy it is for Hashem to do anything. There's a famous Gemara. It says that it's as hard for Hashem to make a zivug, right, a match, as it is for him to split the sea. So the way that we usually learn that is it means it's very hard for him to make a zivug, even though he does it for all of us, and that's amazing. Or it could mean that just like it's not hard for him to make a zivug, it's also not hard for him to split the sea. None of it's hard for him. That's the whole point. None of it's difficult for Hashem. It's all very easy for Hashem. And the fact that we don't believe that, that is the exile. The fact that we're not in the land of Israel, that's the physical manifestation of that exile, but that's not the essence of the exile. The essence of the exile is we do not believe that Hashem is good for everything. So he says, I'm going to give it over to Hashem, whatever it is, before I do anything. Let's say you go to work. Hashem, I'm giving my day to you. If I get yelled at by my boss, I'm giving that to you. If I'm not able to bring the money home that I need to for my family, that's on you. But I'm giving it up to you. And however you want it to go, that's how it's going to go. You should do this before you do anything. Before your husband comes home from work. If you've been fighting for a few days, or if you haven't, say, Hashem, I want to have peace with my husband when we get home. I don't know why we keep fighting. I don't know why we don't understand each other. But Hashem, please help it to be tonight we're at peace. That we connect. Why is it so important? Because it's a miracle when a husband and wife get along. According to Kabbalah, we have two completely different types of consciousness. So when we're speaking to each other, when you're speaking to your husband and your husband's speaking to your wife, or you're speaking to your father and your father's speaking to you, or you're speaking to a guy and a guy's speaking to a girl, it's like two different species talking to each other from two different planets. Now, even though it doesn't look like that, doesn't feel like that, maybe you share the same humor, maybe you share other interests, but the consciousness that you hold and the consciousness of that person is totally different than yours. That's the reason why we fight so much. Even though the husband is such a good guy, and even though the wife is such a good girl, we can't stop fighting. Why? Because you don't think the same at all. At all. That's why when he speaks and you're like, does he not understand anything? Why does he not understand what I'm saying? I keep saying it over and over again. He doesn't understand. And he's thinking to himself as he leaves there, what is wrong with my wife? She doesn't understand anything. What's the reason? Because you guys don't understand each other. It's true. So what does the Torah teach us? Put it on Hashem. The miracle of Shalom Bayit is that it's a miracle. Shalom Bayit is a miracle. If you get along with your husband, that's a miracle. If your kids listen to you, that's a miracle. That's not natural. You want the proof? Think about your upbringing. Did any of you grow up in a home that your parents got along? Did any of you grow up in a home that your family didn't fight? Did any of you grow up in a home where you listened to your parents? Why? It's usually because nobody's relying on Hashem. But if you, and especially the woman, because she has a special koach in tefillah and amunah, and Hashem has a special connection to the Jewish women, that if you rely completely on Hashem, He will never abandon you. Ever. This is what King David is teaching us. If you rely completely on Him, He will not abandon you. He will help you. And He's been looking forward to that moment your whole life. And everything in your life, from the beginning of your life until that moment that you completely rely on Him, was only to get you to that point. And then when you realize Hashem really listened to you, then you have the next world and this world. There's a mitzvah that you have to remember Shabbat every day. It's very interesting. You have to remember the Shabbat every day. So the simple understanding of that means don't forget about Shabbat at the end of the week. Get what you need to get so that when Shabbat comes, you're ready. Rav Nachman says what it means is remember Shabbat today. I mean, take Shabbat into today. Why on Shabbat do you feel at peace? Why on Shabbat are you maybe not fighting with your husband? Why in Shabbat do I not feel stressed to be able to pay my bills? You're going to say it's because I'm not allowed to do anything today. Why? Because Hashem's saying, I'm taking care of you today. You don't have to do anything today. I'm going to take care of you. Who says that's any different any other day? It's just that on Shabbat, he's forcing us to experience it. Why does he force us to experience on Shabbat? So you remember. So the next day that comes on Sunday, you do the same thing. You completely rely on Hashem. The reason we have Shabbat every week is so we don't forget that that's what's possible. Because it's the easiest thing to forget. What is the mitzvah to remember Shabbat every day? It's not just to remember and prepare for Shabbat then. The remembering is remembering it now, meaning that you take it into today. Make your day like Shabbat. What do you do on Shabbat? You completely rely on Hashem. You leave lights on in your house. That's very dangerous. If any secular person knew you did that, they would think you're a danger to society and you're archaic. But you're relying completely on Hashem because Hashem told you to. He says, I'm going to take care of you. You're going to the shul in a neighborhood that maybe is not the best neighborhood. You're going at night with your young kids. Maybe it's not so safe. Hashem says, I'm going to take care of you. So you do it. How come we don't do it during the week? The answer is on Shabbat, we have a special ability to experience that. Part of that is how the rabbis and how Hashem set it up, that you can't do anything else besides rely on him. But the whole purpose of Shabbat is then to take Shabbat into your weekdays. Rav Nachman says you can get to a point that you work on this so much, relying on Hashem completely, that your weekdays feel like Shabbat. They actually feel like Shabbat. There is a very famous Gemara that says that if the Jews keep 2 Shabbats, then Hashem's going to bring the redemption. If all the Jews kept 2 Shabbats, Hashem immediately would bring Geula. This is not a nice thought. This is actually Torah. That if we did that, Hashem would redeem us. That's Talmud Bavli. Okay, that's the Gemara that most people learn. However, there's a Talmud Yerushalmi, which is the Gemara that came from Israel, which is less widely learned, but just as important. And it says there, if we keep 1 Shabbat, if all the Jewish people kept 1 Shabbat, Hashem would redeem us immediately. So what does that really mean for all of us to keep Shabbat one time? It means Eker Asher Eker, that you'll let me be what I can be for you. That if all the Jews at one moment would completely trust in Hashem and throw themselves on Hashem, Hashem would redeem us immediately. Right before we left Egypt, which we're saying now is this type of mindset that I am a victim of my circumstances. That's called Mitzrayim. Nobody can help me. This isn't getting any better. That as soon as all the Jewish people, because of the suffering, cried out to Hashem at the same time, Hashem immediately said, Moshe, go save them. Why? Because at that moment, they all threw their problems on Hashem. That's what it really means that we all keep Shabbat. If we were to all keep Shabbat, Hashem would save us. It means practically every day, if I throw all my problems on Shabbat, and I say, you take care of them, and I live like that, I don't just say it, I actually act accordingly, then he's going to take you out of whatever your problems are. Rav Nachman says, if you can do that and be happy in the midst of your struggle, Hashem will heal you physically and spiritually, and your family. I'll tell you a quick story, a true story, and then we'll take questions. I heard this from a Chabadnik who I trust, I believe him. So he said the story like this. There was a person, a Jew, who was in jail. There's actually a lot of Jews in this jail. Not religious Jews, secular Jews. People who didn't know anything about Torah, they don't know what tefillin is, they don't know what Shabbat is. And there was a Chabad rabbi. And, they want to go everywhere and try and connect Jews back to their source, try and give every Jew a chance to experience who they really are. So this Chabad rabbi went to jail, meaning he went to go teach all the secular Jews in prison. And they would have a class there, because they have classes in prison for people. You can actually get a college degree in prison in America, but whatever. Okay. So this Chabad rabbi went to go teach a class there about Judaism. And there's these secular, imprisoned Jews, and they're taking this class. And one of them, after one of the classes, say, I want to keep a mitzvah. He said, really? He said, yeah, I want to keep a mitzvah. He goes, what mitzvah do you want to keep? He said, I want to keep Shabbat. He said, Shabbat? You know how hard it is to keep Shabbat? And you're in jail. Pick something easy. Let me get you a pair of tzitzit. You just wear them every day. He said, no, I want to keep Shabbat. He said, really, I highly recommend you learn the laws of Shabbat. It's very difficult to keep. Keep any other mitzvah. It's the hardest mitzvah to keep. He said, no, I want to keep Shabbat. He said, okay, fine. I'm going to get you a book. It has all the laws of Shabbat. Learn them slowly. Take your time and learn them and do the best that you can. And every week, this rabbi is coming back to jail and teaching this class. And this guy's taking notes and he's paying attention and he's really connecting. And one day he stops coming to class. And, a few weeks go by, he doesn't pay much attention to it, but then he's worried, why did he stop coming? He was the one who was so interested. He was the one who wanted to take a mitzvah on himself in jail. He didn't grow up with anything his whole life. And he went to the warden, the person who's in charge of all the cells, and he said to him, do you know where this person is? He was coming to all the classes and he's not here. He says he got out of jail. He left jail. He's not here anymore. He said his sentence ended. And he said, no. You want to hear an amazing story? The warden told him, you said he should do a mitzvah. He told me that you told him to do. He told me that he wanted to do Shabbat, and you gave him a book with all of the laws. He told me that in the beginning of this book, before it even said the laws, it said if you keep 2 Shabbats, that HaShem is going to save you, the Jewish people, you. So he decided to completely keep Shabbat twice. This is what he told me. The second Shabbat that he kept, right after that, there was, I don't know if anybody knows this, I didn't know this, but in America, they have a type of lottery that people who have committed certain crimes, if it's not, let's say, the most serious of crime, but it is a crime that has kept you in jail for a long time, then you can be in this lottery that certain people get pardoned all around the country. It's very few people, if you're chosen in this lottery. I don't know exactly how it works. I guess it's worth looking into. It's a very interesting concept. Only a few people are part of this lottery. After he kept these 2 Shabbats, the warden came over to him and told him that, by the way, you should know that you're one of the few people in the entire country who was chosen to be pardoned, to leave jail, after he kept 2 Shabbats. So what's the point of the story? When you cast yourself on HaShem 100%, completely, even if you're in prison, even if you're in jail, even if you're sentenced for life, but you say to HaShem, I'm going to give it all up to you. That's called Shabbat. And that's a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to trust in Hashem. It's not a nice thing to trust in Hashem. And to trust in Hashem means I could be happy no matter what's going on. Because if you trust Him and you know it's coming from Him, there's no reason not to be. Because it means that whatever is happening is what He wants. And that must be the best thing that could possibly happen. Does anybody have any questions about tonight's lesson? And if you don't feel comfortable asking or showing your face, you don't have to. You can do it without the video. And if you don't even feel comfortable talking about it.
I have a question.
Yes.
You said that, if somebody goes, for example, you said that when a woman takes her kids out at night on Shabbat in a dangerous neighborhood, or a not so safe neighborhood, but she, relies on HaShem and HaShem keeps her safe, right? Aren't you not supposed to put yourself in situations like that? And if you do get saved, I read in Ma'am Loaz, I read that if you do get saved from a dangerous situation that you knew something could happen to you, then all your past mitzvahs get erased.
Right. Okay. So I'll tell you right now, this is the big difference between Chassidut and traditional Jewish sources. Is that while it's true what you're saying, there is a concept that if you rely on Hashem for a miracle, let's say, something that's above nature, and you're relying on Him for, you're asking for, you're living according to that, then that merit is taken away from you after this world. Okay. However, the Baal Shem Tov and all of his students, whether it's Rabbi Nachman or it's Chabad, they don't live like this. They throw themselves completely on HaShem, and they don't consider it a miracle, because they consider everything a miracle. Meaning, every world is a brand new world. Every moment is a brand new moment. Everything that you do, I'll explain it like this. Rabbi Nachman says, when you go to pray to Hashem, let's say you go pray the Amidah, or let's say you've been attending the classes and Bezrat Hashem, you're doing Hipodadut, and you're talking to Hashem in your own language, like you'd speak to your best friend. What are you doing every single time that you talk to Hashem? What is that? So you're going to say, I'm just doing whatever the Torah says to do, or whatever the rabbis say to do, and I'm trying to connect to Him. Rabbi Nachman says, every single time you ask Hashem for anything, you're asking for a miracle. So you're going to say, how is that possible? It's not true. I'm asking to be able to pay my bill. It's not a miracle. So Nachman says like this. If according to your life, you have not received the thing that you're looking for, well, that's going according to nature. So when you ask Hashem for a change, it means you're automatically asking for a miracle. Every single time that you pray to Hashem for anything, you're asking for a miracle. Because what's a miracle? Anything that goes above and beyond nature. So that means that your life has brought you to this circumstance. That's according to nature. Now, if you're ever open your mouth at all and pray to Hashem, which is a mitzvah from the Torah to do, and you're asking for a change, you're automatically asking for a miracle, Rabbi Nachman says. So the answer is that it depends on how you look at it. As far as Rabbi Nachman is concerned, and as far as Chassidut is concerned, everything Hashem does for you is a miracle. And therefore, that shouldn't stop you from relying on all of them. And the truth is that in our generation, that we are barely holding on, and that we're growing up in completely disconnected families, not just spiritually, but physically, and that there's no sense of stability, and there's no sense of right, there's no sense of anything anymore. We just have to hold on. We just have to get to the end. And also that one of the main foundations of Chassidut is that you're trying to do things not for yourself. Meaning, to a Chassid, to a person who learns the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov, Rabbi Nachman, he's not concerned about his portion in the next world. He's concerned about his family and his friends and the Jewish people now. So he's not worried if I'm going to lose something then, because that's about him. So that's a simple answer.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
So, it sounds like the concept of Ekye is like bitachon, right? It's like a midah.
Yes.
Some people have it high and some people have it low. So in a marriage, let's say, for instance, or in a partnership, one person has a low level bitachon, the other has a high level of this midah, and then but they're both trying to accomplish the same exact thing. I could see that obviously one person could be doing very little and the other doing very much, but to the extent that you want to achieve something, and you just say, Hashem, I completely rely on you 100%, and the other one is like not that other extreme. Is there any understanding of how that works, how that reconciles?
Yes. So this is actually the case most of the time. In most relationships, you have one person who's trying really hard in this, and the other person who's might also be trying hard in this, or maybe not, or he's just not holding in that place. That doesn't stop you from doing what you need to do, and it doesn't stop Hashem from helping you and for your family. So part of your obstacles in life often are actually your spouse, meaning my spouse doesn't believe like this. My spouse isn't holding in this and doesn't want to hold in this or can't hold in this. And that pressure from the spouse actually increases your need for Hashem. So in a way, if you're able to just surrender completely and to get yourself to that level of bitachon, it actually helps you sometimes when your spouse doesn't feel like that. And then what happens is when you do and it works, which it will, then your spouse will start to feel a little bit that that's possible. When your spouse sees that you're happy no matter what the situation, when your spouse sees that you have life force no matter what the situation, when your spouse sees that you're energetic and that you really believe, and no matter how much pressure you're getting from the outside world and even from her or him, you're still relying on that belief, and then it does work, they're going to be affected very much. And even though it might be hard for them to make that shift with you completely, after time and time of that happening, they will come along. And HaShem doesn't leave anybody behind. And HaShem wants that for everybody. And often what HaShem does is he puts one person in the relationship who's capable of that, of his own volition, of his own, either his desire or just his own inner innate will. And the other person usually is not. And the reason Hashem does that is because one of them is supposed to be helping the other experience that. But it's not through trying to get them to do it. It is through you doing it. And when you do it and they see that everything works, then that's what has the deep effect, because your spouse is a mirror reflection of you. It doesn't mean she has the same qualities as you. It doesn't mean she's holding in the same place as you. But it does mean that wherever you're growing spiritually, there's going to be effect on the other side as well. And Rabbi Nachman explains very clearly that when we say that your wife or your husband is your soulmate, it doesn't just mean they were meant to be. It means literally you're half of a soul and they're the other half of your soul. So the way that the soul works is it's organic. That means that anything that affects the bottom half of the soul affects the top half of the soul. And anything that affects the top half of the soul affects the bottom half of the soul. So it doesn't really necessarily matter how the other person is. The main thing is that you're resolute and that you don't give up on this, and that no matter how many times you fall and no matter how much pressure you get from outside sources, even within your own home, that every day you get up again and you talk to Hashem again and you say, Hashem, I want to believe in you completely no matter what, no matter what. I want my wife to believe it. I want my husband to believe it. I want my kids to believe it. Help me to live like that. But what happens is we want to live like that, but we don't act like that. So we get angry and we get sad and we get scared, which is fine. And we're also trying to live with that faith. So what does the spouse feel? The spouse just feels that my husband, my wife is being irresponsible. He's not doing anything and he's not even happy about it. But if you can get to the point that you rely on Hashem completely and you can maintain your joy and your energy and you're a better husband or wife because of it, and you're a better father or mother because of it, and that things are being taken care of, they'll start to realize. And then actually you both will realize the reason why you got married. She'll realize it and she'll say thank you and that she's proud of you. And I know that's hard to believe from where you're holding, but you'll get there. And if it's the other spouse, then the other way around too. You have to be fearless. You have to really invest yourself completely. And again, the only way to be able to stay strong in this is to do hibodedut every day. Because if you don't have that time, that hour every day that you talk to Hashem and you bare your heart to Him and you ask Him for help and support, you're never going to have the courage to stand up to all of the challenges, because everything in the world goes counter to this idea. However, when you do allow yourself to rely on Hashem completely, which is only possible through that hour every day, then your wife will start to believe and your kids will start to believe. I'm telling you, I know that everything in your body or your mind is telling you that's not true or that can't be. I've tried that. It's true. And there's many people who have experienced it. It just takes time. It takes patience, and it takes a lot of falling and getting back up. And it takes a lot of talking to Hashem. But eventually, in the end, if you rely completely on Hashem, He will never let you go, ever, no matter what it looks like.
I have a question.
Yes.
You were talking about doing his bodhidut daily. Like, do you keep saying the same thing, or is there something like how do you find the right words to speak to him? That's my problem. I know I do it weekly, once a week, but how can you do it daily? Like, how much can you find things to talk about?
Do you ever speak to your friends? Do you have a friend you speak to every day, or a spouse, or a child, or is there someone that you speak to every day?
Sister, mother. We talk about
Um,
kids.
okay. How do you do that every day?
It's just simple. Just call and find out how they are and how we doing.
Okay. So, why don't you do that with Hashem?
I don't know.
Rabbi Nachman says when you speak to Hashem, you should speak to him like he's your best friend. So what does that mean? How's it going? How are you doing over there? I'm dying over here. I'm struggling over here. I need a lot of help. How are you doing? I'd love to know. I never heard you speak to me. I would love to hear you. I'd love to know what's going on with you. This is what's going on with me. Me and my husband are not getting along at all. My kids are not listening to me. I have health issues. I need your help now. So I'm almost certain that the reason why we feel we don't have what to say is because we talk to Hashem not like that, like our best friend, like you'd speak to your sister, or your mother, or your whoever you feel most comfortable. But Rabbi Nachman says explicitly, and he said it multiple times, when you do hibodedut, talk to Hashem like he is your best friend, not like your dad even, like your best friend. And that's going to help you find the words to say. That's one thing. 2, take these classes that we do together and pray on what you learn. Meaning, let's say tonight we learned about this concept of throwing yourself completely on Hashem. Talk to Hashem about that. Say to Hashem, Hashem, I learned this week that you can actually rely on you completely. I don't believe that at all. I don't feel that. I don't see that. I don't believe that. But I want so desperately to believe that. Help me to feel and to experience that you can do that. Help me to trust you more than I do. Help me to see it, not just to believe it. I want to believe it also, but I also want to see it. I need to see it. I need your help now. So part of it is turning the things that you learn into prayers. Rabbi Nachman says you should turn Torah into tefillah. It means that you should take the truths that you're learning from the Torah, and definitely from the wisdom of Chassidut, and 100% from the wisdom of Rabbi Nachman if you're learning it. Just turn whatever he teaches you into a prayer. Whatever connects to you, whatever resonates with you, whatever you'd like to experience that he's talking about, turn that into a prayer. It will get answered. Number 3, this is a touchy topic, not just for women, also for men, and for our generation. Rabbi Nachman says very clearly, in many different places, that your ability to rely completely on Hashem is dependent on your sexual purity. So what does that mean? It means that whatever the Torah says about sexuality, not just with your husband or your wife, but also in the things that you watch. There's a lot of religious Jews. There's no judgments, no nothing. I grew up, completely secular. I know what it's like. They wear a head cover. They wear a wig. They go to shul. They pray at home. They say Tehillim. And then they watch whatever show they watch on Netflix. And it's not talked about. And there's reason, because it's a very sensitive topic. But the truth is that tremendously affects your faith. And I don't have time to go into why that is right now. Maybe if you guys are interested, we could have a class about that, because it's very, very important. But your purity in the area of sexuality, and that also means everything that you see and hear, to the degree that you're pure in that area, to that degree you can simply believe in Hashem and throw everything on Him. So the less that you do that other part, the less you're able to actually believe that Hashem can take care of you. And I know it seems like there's no connection, and it's a very weird, what does one have to do with the other? But they're very, very connected, and I can't stress it enough. So if you want to know what's something I can pray on, I highly suggest that you ask Hashem, help me not to see or hear things, especially those things that I like to, a lot of people, they raise their children, right? You're growing up, you're the one who's the main caretaker in your house. Maybe you're also working a job. And now that you're religious or whatever, and you're trying to connect to Hashem, now you're not doing half of the things that you enjoy doing. So what do you do? Like at night when everybody goes to sleep, okay, let me just watch my favorite show from when I was growing up. So the issue is that the things that they talk about and the things that they do, they're against the Torah. And this is not about judgment. This is not about criticism. This is just a fact. That in the area of sexuality, HaShem cares very much, almost more so than anything. And it's hard for us as growing up secular to understand why that is in the beginning. And the ability for you to believe that Hashem can do everything for you is to the degree that you can become pure in this area. So I would ask Hashem to help you with that. You guys can let me know, maybe text in the group if you're interested in talking about it. It is a very important topic. I haven't spoken about it because it is very sensitive and it's not something that many people speak about, but it is one of the topics that Rabbi Nachman speaks about more than anything. And in my personal life, since becoming Baal Tshuva to now, the degree to which I've worked on that area is to the degree which I've been able to rely and experience the answers to my prayers completely with Hashem.